Turn 1 soul ring.
Got it.
Yay.
Got
I
it.
do like all the photos and stuff. It's a fancy document.
Yeah, it's and it's it's a little less boring that way. And remember those novels that you could get where in the middle it was a bunch of like photo paper pictures?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Scholastic book fairs.
I would always get those. I would always get those out of the library and not read the book and just look at the pictures.
Sure.
That was a lot of fun.
I was a big fan of Hansen back in the day. Woo. And they had a novel like that. I don't know, it was like an autobiography thing.
The Spice Girls had one too.
Yeah.
I looked at that a lot.
There you go. And in the middle of the Hansen book, there was pictures. I don't think I ever actually read the book. I just liked the pictures in the middle.
Yeah. Anyways, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our lore series. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And today we have our guest host and our editor, Ainsley, joining us.
Hi, I'm Ainsley.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we are continuing with Urza's story and his personal war against Phyrexia. We're taking the majority of the information that we'll be covering in this series from the novel Time Streams. It is the third novel in the Artifact cycle, and it was written by J. Robert King and was originally published in 1999. The paperback is extremely expensive, so if you want to read it, I would advise you to find a PDF of the novel to download and read. And that's what I did. If you go on Amazon and look at these books, they are very expensive. And they were also reprinted in a, because there's 4 books in the series, they're also reprinted into a 2-book volume. And those are also very expensive. So save your money and just go and get a PDF if you want to read these.
Although if you do get just the PDF, you might miss out on the sweet cover art.
Yeah, that's Karn.
Is that
And
Karn?
that's a huge spoiler, by the way. I'm kidding. No,
There's
I'm
also
kidding.
like a weatherlight looking boat thing. Sort of.
It does. It looks. Yeah, and I think you can see some parapets of probably what is the Tolarian Academy.
I think so, yeah.
I think behind that. Like we mentioned near the end of our Planeswalker series, Urza had already had plans for the Tolarian Academy when he was living in a cabin with Zancha. Remember when he was living in that cabin? And Rat, yeah. Rat was there too. That's
They were
when
like the odd triple pod.
Yeah,
The Odd Pod.
That sounds like a good sitcom. So in Time Streams, Urza's plans for the Academy, populated with like-minded wizards and artificers, came together to prepare for the inevitable Phyrexian invasion of Dominaria.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, there is a set called Invasion, so
Yeah.
it is inevitable.
I see what they did there.
Yeah. This story begins about 40 years after the events of Planeswalker. By that time, Urza and the wizard Baron had already founded the Academy and began training young mages and artificers. They had also just completed the sentient artifact creature that they would eventually come to call Karn. But for the, we're just going to start calling him Karn now. But we'll get to the part in the story where he actually gets the name.
So right now he is the sentient be known as Karn.
Yeah. But I'm not gonna say that.
But they just kind of like offset. There's no like they introduce him as like, hey, this robot's a thing too.
They actually refer to him as the Probe. But before we get to explaining the new characters in the story, we're going to explain a bit about the island of Talaria and the academy that Urza and Baron built there. Talaria was a legendary island on Dominaria. It was, of course, well known for being the site of the original Tolarian Academy. Most people thought of Talaria as a myth, a land of great wealth that was lost to an unknown curse that covered the island in a terrible devouring mists. Sort of sounds like Argoth from the Brothers' War. Mm-hmm. For centuries, sailors told tales of the island, of people who entered the isle's interior only to return weeks later without any knowledge of the time that had passed, or worse still, of people gone for hours but aged years.
Ooh, it's like that movie with Matthew McConaughey where he goes to space.
Interstellar.
That one.
Yeah. Great movie.
It's very good.
Anyways, the geography of Talaria was that of a large tropical island. I'm sure you've all seen those before. It was lightly forested with palm trees on the shore and hardwood trees on the interior. It was part of a chain of islands that were uninhabited during the time that Urza and his school existed, and it's unknown if the islands near Talaria were ever inhabited. But before the founding of the Academy, Talaria was home to many shapeshifters, as well as other creatures native to the island were fairies, drakes, and sentient illusions, so probably ghosts. That's what that sounds like. In addition, merfolk and sea serpents inhabited the surrounding waters. And after the founding of the Academy, the island was, of course, home to many humans as well.
All right.
Well, also, I guess with the sentient illusions, like we have like, Phantasmal Dragon and the bear and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if there's, like depictions of other animals as illusions as well.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess they'd have to be. I don't think the bear and the serpent are sentient though. They might be. I don't know. I mean, it's magic, so really anything could happen. We could even get like
magic.
Walking Dead characters in here. Who knows?
Oh boy.
You know what we should do is call up Weird Al, tell him that he needs to make a song called Sentient Illusions to Lady Gaga's Perfect Illusion. And we're going to make tons of money.
That would sell.
Yeah.
That would sell. Anyway, Urza chose the island as a location for his school and research laboratories because of the vast distance that it was from any other landmass in Dominaria. He wanted to keep its existence a mystery, so of course an island of mystery was the perfect spot. One last interesting detail about the Academy was that Urza only allowed children to attend. This was because he knew that Phyrexian sleeper agents never appeared as children and thus could not infiltrate his school. So it was sort of like, it started off with Urza and Baron and a bunch of kids, and then as those kids grew into adults, those former students would become the teachers of the Academy, and that's sort of how Urza avoided Phyrexian sleepers infiltrating his school.
Moles.
Exactly.
Mole, mole, mole.
That's good. It's never too late for a Mike Myers reference.
Oh man, I love Austin Powers.
So we're gonna move on to the new characters. In addition to Karn and Baron making their first appearances, a couple of other well-known characters from Magic were students at the Academy. Those characters are Joyra and Teferi. And we're going to cover a bit about these characters and their lives before they arrived on Teleria. And we'll start with Baron. We talked a bit about Baron's backstory several weeks ago. It's probably a couple months ago now, when we did that. We deck teched Riley's Baron Telerian Archmage deck. So go back and check out that episode. It's very, very fun deck if you like to be disliked by your opponents.
Is that the one you guys kept saying was jank?
It's hard to say because it was a Riley deck tech. So
most of them are jank.
Yeah,
he likes jank.
They're good. They're good though. He wins a lot.
We love you, Riley.
Baron was born in the Teresian kingdom of Keldor during the Ice Age, the same Ice Age that Urza caused. Originally named Baronalo, he was prophesied to become the most powerful wizard in all of Dominaria. Before he would make that prophecy a reality, he was a mid-level bureaucrat in the Keldoran political system. He eventually adopted the name Baron after running out of ink signing his name one time.
That's silly.
It is, huh? But he just went with it. Can you imagine?
No, just give yourself a nickname.
Yeah, absolutely. Just everybody that's listening, just run out of ink.
He's like,
more
my
often.
ink pod is Baron.
It's funny you say that because it kept this document kept autocorrecting to like Baron like the leader or Baron like the soil. I can't grow anything in the soil.
Right.
It is barren.
Yeah. It is
barren wastes.
Exactly. Yeah. And once Baron was more experienced in wizardry, Urza contacted him and shared his plan for defending Dominaria. Then they became best friends and got to work.
BFFs.
Are
we best friends now? And Urza was like, yup.
Are you guys thinking what I'm thinking? Like, Urza shows up and he's like, "You're a wizard, Harry."
Oh, yeah, that's better. Yeah.
It's like, my name's not Harry.
No, this is rife with potential Harry Potter references.
Well, J.K. Rowling probably stole this.
Well, she stole the J from his author name. That's for sure.
That's right. Yeah, J. Robert King. Get that money. I bet he's not transphobic. Anyways. Moving on to Karn, he was created and built by Urza and Baron so that they could experiment with time travel, which is a big part of the first part of this story. Karn was a hulking silver golem. He was silver because Urza and Baron discovered that silver was exceptionally more resistant to the stresses of time travel than other materials. Karn was also the first sentient artifact creature Urza had ever built. Urza achieved this sentience by using his former companion's Zancha Heartstone as part of the construction of his of Karn's perspective cortex, or his brain. The addition of Zancha's Heartstone allowed Karn to develop a personality that grew and evolved much like that of a child. So Karn, in that way, is Phyrexian.
He's their baby.
He is their baby.
Cute.
Baron and Urza are Karn's parents.
Aww.
Interesting that the Hearthstone is like in his brain.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah, because at the after Zancha and Retepe died, Urza still had Zancha's Heartstone that he had kept.
Yeah.
Since she gave it to him before they left Sarah's realm.
That's sweet. It's like she donated her eggs or something, you know, and then they used it to make a child. But
yeah, it's very
Sure.
it's very, very cool. So moving on to Joyra, she was a talented artificer that was brought to the academy at age 11, and by the time of this story, she had already been studying at the academy for 10 years and had become a high-ranking senior student, but not yet a teacher. Joyra was originally a part of the Gitu tribe, a nomadic tribe of people that traveled across the continent of Shiv on Dominaria. And we'll be going to Shiv later on in the story, so we'll explain more about it then. We're not going to get bogged down just yet. We're not going to get bogged down at all, unless we start doing Mike Myers references.
who's this guy?
That's Teferi. This is everybody's favorite pioneer, historic, and modern legal planeswalker.
In this photo you have here, it looks like he's about to cause some mischief.
He's
He
like,
is.
oh shit! That's totally what he's saying. Yeah.
And when we first meet Teferi in the story, he's just 14 years old. He had been attending the academy for several years by the time this story takes place. And in that time, he developed a reputation for being kind of a pain in the ass. He played pranks on teachers and students alike. And Urza and Baron gave him a pass on his behavior because he was incredibly talented when it came to magic. I think the prophecy was probably more likely for Teferi as opposed to Baron. Not that Baron isn't a powerful wizard in his own right.
I also like that he was a pain in the ass at school, and then just like playing magic, he's also a pain in the ass.
It's very flavorful. Absolutely. So now that we know a bit about Talaria and the characters that we'll be talking about over the next few episodes, we can get to the events that took place during this time period. We're going to start with Ainsley reading part of one of Baron's many monologues from the novel. So the following is essentially how Baron views Urza at the beginning of this story.
Urza is incapable of regret and gratitude, of having dear friends. Not that there haven't been folk like Zancha, Retepe, Sarah, and I, who genuinely love the man and would give our lives for him, but he seems incapable of returning our affection. That's not enough to declare him insane, of course. As I said, measures of sanity among planeswalkers are hard to come by, but there is something mad about Urza's blithe belief that Zancha and Retepe sacrificed themselves, that Sarah's realm and Argoth sacrificed themselves, that Mishra sacrificed himself. It seems everyone and everything Urza claims to care about gets destroyed. And what does that mean for me, his newest dear friend?
Yeah, so a big part of this story is Urza's redemption and Urza taking accountability for his past actions. And we start to see that at the end of Planeswalker, but this is the story where he really, sort of becomes a human being for the first time, somebody who possesses compassion. And Karn is a big part of that.
Redeeming a little bit. I'm going to be that guy for a minute here and just grammar disclaimer, guys. So I know that it's sort of like been drilled into us that whenever you're listing people, including yourself, you're supposed to end it with "and I." But there are some instances, like in the instance of this passage, folk like Zancha, Retepe, Sarah, and I, it should be me. Because if the other list wasn't there, it would say, Urza's incapable of having dear friends like me. So you wouldn't say like I. So,
Okay.
just some food for thought.
That's our disclaimer for this episode.
Throwing that out into the ether.
It's not grammatically, it's not super well written, but it's that's team
It's
fiction
interesting
for you.
though.
It is interesting, yeah, and it's also hard not to say Retepe with a little bit of a exotic
Flavorful accent.
flair.
Yeah.
I think like Baron's passage here, it makes it sound like he's thinking that, Urza is someone who thinks that he has to go on and do all these things, and everyone is they have sacrificed to help Urza go on and, save the realms, or whatever we're going to call it, the planes, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it could be interpreted that way. I kind of thought it to mean like he's suggesting that instead of Urza kind of taking accountability for some of these people who've died around him, he says that they sacrificed themselves.
Yeah, I think for Urza, a lot of this has been the ends justifies the means. Like if I can save Dominaria from Phyrexia, it doesn't matter what's left in my wake.
Yeah.
And anyways, the students and tutors at the academy don't know Urza's real name or identity, but for the sake of brevity, we're going to be referring to Urza as Urza for this series. Just know that no one other than Baron knows who Urza really is, at least the beginning of the story. But when Urza starts to use his powers, it becomes clear what he really is, and the characters do find out. So we're probably not going to point that out, but it'll be apparent when they do. It's not a huge like watershed moment for these characters.
It's kind of like how in the last novel, we referred to Rat as Rat, but Urza was referring to him as Mishra throughout the whole novel.
Yeah. They pulled a fast one on him.
They sure did. They done tricked him.
So our story begins on the island of Talaria, of course, but instead of finding our newly introduced characters somewhere in the academy, we find Jorah in the cave hideout that she had built for herself during her time at the academy. Her hideout was located near the coast of the island, and on that particular day, she was spending her time looking out at the ocean. She couldn't see very far, as the island was surrounded by an almost constant mist of thick fog, like we mentioned earlier.
Ooh.
She was thinking about her former home in Shiv, as well as her soulmate, a soulmate that she hadn't met yet. Jorah explained that she knew her soulmate would have to be mysterious.
She could not be in love with a man unless, at the core of his being, there was mystery. I feel you, girl.
No, that's a red flag.
Like, what?
That's a red flag.
No, I'm kidding.
You can't go into the garage, honey.
It's like women who think that they can like fix, it's like, they like to be with like someone who's damaged because they want to fix them. It's like, no, you can't fix them.
People don't change. Don't change. Anyways, it was during this ocean viewing that Jorah, it's a bit of a consonant jumble there. It was during this ocean viewing that Jorah noticed a piece of white fabric flapping in the wind near the craggy cliffs to the east coast of the island. Jorah thought it might have been another student that had gotten too close to the cliff edge and fallen. As Jorah made her way down the cliff's edge, she noticed the fabric was tied to something rigid, a sail. Jorah found a small ship that had crashed into something before it crashed again into this side of the island. The boat was in a precarious situation. It had a large hole in the front of its hull, and with each wave, the hole was made bigger against the shore's rocks. Jorah approached the ship cautiously. She knew how few ships approached Talaria. The island was far too remote and distant from normal trade routes to attract other ships. Jorah thought it might be abandoned, but either way, she made her way onto the deck before searching the various cabins below deck. In one cabin, Jorah came across a man she thought was dead. He wasn't, and Jorah took him back to her cave hideout and nursed him back to health.
Nice.
Yeah, and he was mysterious.
Ooh.
Might be her soulmate. The man's name was Carrick, and Jorah thought he was beautiful.
Oh.
He was big, he was strong, and he had blonde locks flowing down to his shoulders.
Like Fabio.
We have a Fabio in Magic.
I forgot to put curly, so not quite like Fabio,
Okay.
but close.
Well,
Okay.
And I don't know, could this be Jorah's man of mystery?
no. I'm okay. Put your votes in. What do you think, Eric? Is this her man of mystery?
No.
No, I don't think so. I think it's probably going to be someone she doesn't expect.
Yeah, because a man of mystery is a red flag, so it's probably bad.
Oh my god.
Anyway, students of the academy were ordered to report any such castaways, but Jorah was worried about what would happen to Carrick if she reported his arrival, so she didn't. secrets.
Oh.
While Jorah was hiding Carrick, Urza and Beren were waking up Karn for the first time. They didn't call him Karn at first, like we mentioned earlier. They only referred to him as the Probe. They had built him for the purpose of time travel. Urza had already built a functioning time machine, but anything made of flesh couldn't survive the stresses of temporal displacement. Sort of like the opposite of the Terminator time machines, where only organic material could go through the time machine. So that's why they had to cover the Terminators in flesh, exactly. Or in the first one where they send Kyle Reese and he's just a man.
He's a man, baby.
Yes. Anyway, instead of sending any old artifact creature traveling through time, Urza and Beren had decided that it would be best to send something that could fully understand their mission. That mission being to travel back in time to before Yawgmoth started down his path towards becoming the architect of Phyrexia. Although Urza didn't know the extent of Yawgmoth's humble beginnings, I bet people did call him Yawg. For short. It's like, hey, Yawg.
Yawg.
This is my buddy Yawg. Nice,
It's like, yo, Yawg. Yeah.
He's going to be a doctor someday. He's really into medicine.
Good.
So he knew that some members of the Thran became the first Phyrexians, of course, and we actually covered Yawgmoth in greater detail at the top of our series covering the novel Planeswalker. So if you want to know more, you can listen to that episode. And there's also a unofficial audiobook on Spotify for the novel The Thran. If you want to check that out, just go on Spotify and search The Thran, and I'm sure you'll find it. Beren wasn't totally on board for the whole time traveling thing. He pointed out that by going back in time a few thousand years could stop the Thran from becoming Phyrexia, but it would also be tantamount to erasing everyone that had existed on Dominaria since that time. And per the excerpt we had Ainsley read, Urza would rather wipe the proverbial slate clean than deal with the part he's played in letting the Phyrexians back into Dominaria. Because, of course, Urza is still kind of piece of shit at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, it's just like, we want to get rid of this evil, and if some people die for it or don't exist, well, there's no more Phyrexia, so.
Yeah. Yeah, the ends justify the means.
The greater good.
But I guess Urza wouldn't also exist. And that also presupposes that in this, I hate to get into a conversation about time travel, but it presupposes that Urza thinks that that it's not that time is not predetermined. So if he goes back in time, he can alter his present. It's sort of like the movie Frequency. That's how time travel worked in that movie. So like Jim Caviezel's character Dennis Quaid's character shot off the serial killer's hand. And then in Jim Caviezel's time, like 30 years later, when he was fighting that same serial killer, that serial killer's hand dematerialized. That's the kind of time travel that Urza is talking about, as opposed to like Dragon Ball Z time travel, where it's more like traveling to a different dimension. So like Trunks travels back in time to give Goku the heart disease vaccine, but it doesn't affect Trunks's timeline. So, we don't really know what kind of time travel we're dealing with here.
There's also Back to the Future timeline, which would
exactly
be
where it like fades. Yeah. But it's not as immediate as Frequency. So there's a lot of ins and outs here that I don't think Urza has really adjusted for. Looper's another one. Yeah, Looper's more like Frailty or Frequency. Yeah. Frailty, also a good movie.
Yeah, well, I was going to say with Looper, like the guy, there were many moments where they showed where a guy, like, something happened to him in the past and he, like, loses his hand or whatever there in the future.
Yeah.
It's like poof. Yeah.
Poof.
Or you carve something into your skin in the past and you still have the scar in the future. It just, like, magically appears, the scar.
Scar just magically appears.
or there's the type of time stream where everything is predetermined, so you are always predetermined to travel through time, so you can't really change anything. So there's that one, too. But getting back to Karn, or the Probe, as Urza and Beren called him. Karn was intelligent and was fully capable of moving his body, but he would need to learn social integration as well as how to interpret his emotions. On Karn's first day of life, Urza ordered that Karn be sent out to interact with the students and teachers of the academy in order to develop his personality. One of the first people Karn met was the young mage Teferi. Teferi already had a reputation at the school for being a handful, and he behaved no differently with Karn. Teferi started by shaking Karn's hand with a shocking spell that had little effect on the Silver Man. Teferi then moved on to questioning what kind of name the probe was, and started spitballing more appropriate names for the Silver Man. Teferi finally landed on the name Artie Shovelhead. Shortly after that, Teferi gave Karn a tour of the academy, and they finished the tour at the Great Furnace, a large room filled with dissected artifact creatures, dismantled machines, and piles of rusted scrap metal. Teferi explained to Karn that this was where all of Urza's machines ended up when they no longer served a purpose. They would be melted down and reformed into new machines, and this explanation sent a shiver of dread through Karn. He thought that he might one day end up here, especially since Teferi said as much. But, you know, anyone who's up to speed on magic knows better. And this is another ongoing theme in this story, the parent-child relationship between Urza and Karn. Urza has to learn that Karn is his child, essentially, and more importantly, has the mind of a child. While Karn learns he's not just a machine. I think this next excerpt from the novel illustrates this, and again, it's from Baron.
What we've got here is no longer just a machine. You know it, and I know it. So does the probe. You gave him emotions. You need to acknowledge those emotions. You need to respect those emotions. Don't you see? This is not just a probe anymore. He is a man. No, more than that. He is a child. He'll need to be guided like one.
That's a man, baby.
Right? Yeah, it's true. Come on, Urza. You got to acknowledge and validate his feelings.
Mm-hmm. Urza's never been good at that, though.
Oh, God, no.
Remember that wife of his?
Ugh.
And he makes a bunch of machines, too, so he's like, oh, it's just like the others.
Poor Karn. He's like, I'm going to end up in the trash. Poor guy.
Yeah, really, for sure. It's like Teferi's his mean older brothers that tell him he's not good.
Yeah.
So now that Karn had started to learn and explore, it was time to throw him into the time machine and see how far back they could send him. If you'd like to get an idea of what their time machine looked like, you can see it partially depicted on the card Temporal Aperture. And I definitely don't think this image inspires a ton of confidence, but that's Urza there, doing his magics.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Got a nice beard happening.
Yeah, he does have a great beard.
It's a nice beard.
I wonder how long it was that he was like exploring the school and stuff before they just decided to send him back. Because it doesn't really say.
No, it was like the same. It was like the same day. Yeah.
Oh,
it was like
okay.
his first day. We're like, get him in there. He's operational. Get him in there. We don't have
Still his
time
first
for
day.
this. Yeah, we don't have time
Let's
for
go
this.
for it.
Yeah, the book's only 280 pages, so they gotta wrap it up.
Get to it. Come on,
Yeah.
hop to it.
Before Urza and Baron sent Karn on his first trip with the machine, they explained to him that in addition to being able to send him to different times, the machine could also send him to different locations. But because there would be no time machine located wherever and whenever they sent Karn, they designed their machine to work like a boomerang, meaning that each trip Karn was sent on would have a time limit. So let's say Karn was sent back in time 12 hours. He could only be able to stay in that time and place for a limited period of time before being pulled back to his present, standing under the time machine. So that makes sense.
I think that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and that's sort of how I don't know how it worked in the novel timeline, but in the movie they had these little like necklaces that they could use to get back, but they had to do it at a specific time because that's when they would activate the machine.
I just feel like relying on an object to get back would be so anxiety inducing.
Well, that's why like H.G. Wells hit the nail on the head, because you just get in the time machine and then you travel back in time, but you stay in the same place and you're like piloting the machine. That's how I would want to do it. I'd want to have full control over the machine. But Karn's just like, all right, I guess I'll do it. I'm a kid.
He doesn't know.
No, he doesn't know. This poor guy.
He doesn't know about consent.
No, he doesn't. An artifact creature can't give consent.
What?
Well, Karn can, because he's sentient.
There was a movie that actually kind of does this. I don't remember what it's called, but there's like guys that are really interested in medieval times, and then they're trying to make like a a machine that can transport a package from one area to another, but they accidentally like make a time machine.
No, that's
And it sends the
that's
package-
that's Timeline. It's based on a Michael Crichton novel with this of the
Oh,
same
that is
title.
that.
Yeah, it's Timeline.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
with Billy Connolly and what's that guy from Fast and the Furious that died?
Oh, Paul Walker.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Oh,
Yeah.
not Hot Tub Time Machine?
No, that's a good one too, though. So the first trip that they sent Karn on was only a few hours backward earlier that same morning. The trip was successful, and Urza and Baron got Karn to make a report on what he saw. And Karn saw his past self dismantled, and that kind of bummed him out. But the time machine worked, and they could start sending Karn further and further back until he reached the time of the Thran. This next bit is from Baron.
The first day of life is always the hardest. To be dragged from whatever warm, safe womb in which one is conceived, and then thrust into the cold glare of the world. There is much to adjust to. Breathing air instead of liquid for one, being naked and prodded and scrubbed for another. Worst of all, there is that moment when the cord is cut, and one is suddenly and irrevocably alone. It is in recognition of such traumas that mother's arms are made. You have no mother. You have no father either. You have a pair of creators, but that is not the same. Neither of us knows how to comfort and protect you. If you need too much nurturing, we may even consider you defective. Perhaps it is because you were designed to be a tool, a weapon, not a person. Perhaps it is because we have not expected to have to save you. We were hoping you would save us.
Yep.
Interesting.
So several weeks later, Joyra and Karn met for the first time. Joyra already knew of Karn, of course, as a senior artificer at the Academy. She was present when Urza and Baron had showcased their Silver Man on several occasions during his construction, but she hadn't seen him since he had been fully completed. One of Joyra's tasks as a senior artificer was to interview Karn. Urza and Baron wanted Joyra to write a treatise on Karn, specifically explaining how an automaton becomes a thinking, feeling creature with nothing more than the addition of a crystal, which is what the Heartstone looks like. I don't think Urza told anybody what it actually was. We know that the crystal she is referring to is, of course, Zancha's Heartstone, and, it just works. The interview was quite fortuitous because it was how Karn got his name. Up until this point, he was still being referred to as the Probe. While Joyra was asking Karn questions about his experience of being the first living artifact, she showed him drafting sketches that she had made of him throughout his construction. On one of those drafting sketches was the word Karn next to a bracket that traced the golem's frame. Karn asked Joyra what the word meant. She told Karn that the word was Thran. The word meant mighty, and so that's how Karn got his name. Like Joyra just said, Karn said, I like that, and Joyra was like, boom, that's your name, buddy. And now they were best friends. So Urza has a best friend, and Karn has a best friend.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Yay, friends.
Yeah. Joyra continued to ask Karn about the dead-looking power stone that was housed in his head. Karn pointed out the possibility that it might not be a power stone. He also explained that through time travel, he had seen himself without the stone in his head, and without it, he was just another automaton. Karn had let slip his secret time-traveling project with Urza and Baron, but now that Joyra and Karn were best friends, it didn't matter because she wasn't going to tell anybody.
Good.
Yeah. Because she doesn't want to get in trouble either.
No.
Yeah.
Just as Joyra began to ask more questions, Baron arrived to request Karn's presence for another experiment. Things went on like that for another couple of months, Karn being sent further and further back in time, Joyra and Karn getting to know each other better, and Joyra keeping Carrick a secret. Don't forget about Carrick. He's going to come back.
Oh, yeah, Carrick.
Carrick and his luscious locks.
He's beautiful.
He's beautiful.
Which is like... It's like Crick.
Yeah.
But
So
anyways.
it was on one of these time travel experiments that Karn discovered Carrick living in Joyra's cave. Just living in a
his
cave. He had been sent 18 hours back and 5 miles away from where the time machine stood, and that 5 miles took Karn beyond the island and into the surrounding waters. While he was looking back at the island, he saw a small light coming from the cave. He moved closer to the cave, and when Carrick saw that the golem was moving closer, he let several arrows fly at the golem. but that didn't really matter as arrows just bounce right off of Karn because he's a silver man. Realizing that this was an act of aggression and knowing the rules about people living outside of the academy grounds, Karn started back toward the island to capture the man. When Karn made his way back to the coast, he and Carrick began to tussle. Their fight woke up Jorah, who was sleeping in the cave at the time. Surprised by her presence, Karn stopped trying to capture Carrick. She then explained the situation to Karn and asked him to keep her secret. And, since Jorah was already keeping a secret for Karn.
And they're BFFs, and
They're
they
BFFs.
pinky swore.
That's right.
You don't tell.
So Karn kept the secret, but it was a bad secret to keep. And shortly after his exchange with Jorah, Karn was pulled back to the present under the time machine. Anyway, in a few more months, the time machine had been perfected even more, and they were now able to send Karn thousands of miles away, as well as sending him an entire day into the past. As a result of the continued experiments with time travel, the present time was starting to be affected by anomalies. At first, the anomalies were subtle and far between, slight time lags passing through the air like mild tremors. The frequency of these anomalies gradually grew worse as they pushed the limits of time travel further. The slight time lags began occurring 1 week from 1 day. All kinds of things began to happen, but it was mostly mundane things like filling a glass too full with liquid or a steak being burned to a crisp while steaks near it were barely cooked. In more severe cases of these temporal distortion tremors, students and tutors suffered from hearts skipping beats or stopping altogether while inside them. When caught in some of these tremors, students and tutors were also unable to breathe. This resulted in the academy infirmary filling up with the very old and the very young. So there's sort of like tremors floating through the air, and you can kind of just get caught in them. And then, let's say you're in a slow time stream and your heart stops, or you're in a fast time stream and
you're having heart palpitations.
Yeah, or your steak gets cooked too fast. And you're like, well, there goes my steak.
Well, there goes my steak.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But the experiments continued because, of course, the ends justify the means.
Yep.
Which isn't the opinion of this podcast, but it's Urza's opinion. Much to Karn's objections, Karn didn't like that the experiments he'd been created to undertake were causing so much pain and trouble. So he conveyed how he felt about it to Urza and Baron, to which Urza replied with the same old, our mission is more important than a few Academy members winding up in the infirmary. Baron was a bit more sympathetic to Karn's feelings, but he overall agreed with Urza and their mission. Like we said at the beginning of this series, Baron knows who Urza really is, and that knowledge is expressed in this next excerpt.
Sometimes I forget all Urza has seen, all he has done. He is not mad, not holy. He is ancient and inhuman, transformed by the millennia, but he is not wholly mad.
Yeah, so, Baron's sympathetic to everyone involved.
Baron seems like a nice guy.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
So let's get back to Jorah and Carrick. He's beautiful, by the way, if we haven't already expressed that. After a couple more months, they were still... actually, no, that's... I got to move that. They actually never had sex. They never sealed the deal. But they did a lot of... snuggling and probably dry humping and
hand stuff.
Yeah, probably hand stuff, but no full penetration. And on that particular night, Jorah was being followed to her cave by Teferi. Because he wants to know what she's up to. She's sneaking out of the academy. She's not supposed to be out there. So now Teferi knew Jorah's secret as well. And even though Jorah already didn't like Teferi, I don't think we mentioned that, but she doesn't like him. Teferi decided he didn't want to make the situation between the two of them worse by telling anyone about this stranger that Jorah was sneaking away to see most nights. And on his way back to the academy, Teferi was caught by a couple of guards that brought him back to the academy to be interrogated, which they did for hours without getting any information out of him about why he was outside the academy grounds. The interrogation took most of the night without getting any information out of Teferi, and by morning, the guards had decided to turn him over to Urza for further questioning. Urza could just, read his mind. But as we know from Planeswalker, sometimes when Urza tries to read your mind, he might kill you.
Yep.
This was information that Karn knew because I guess he was connected to the goings-on of the security force of the academy, but I really don't know. Once Karn put two and two together regarding what Teferi was doing in the woods, he went to Jorah to tell her that her secret might soon be known by the academy's headmaster, which was Urza. Karn was confident that if the guards didn't get any information out of Teferi, then it was unlikely that he would give any to Urza. But, of course, these characters don't know the extent of Urza's power at this point.
Still, yeah.
Jorah had a less favorable opinion of the situation as well as Teferi. She thought that he was probably holding out for the right price, maybe one that involved Jorah being expelled from the academy. Either way, Jorah decided to go directly to Urza and confess before Teferi could tell him. So the two of them went back to the academy to find Urza. When the two arrived at Urza's office, he was interrogating Teferi, who was still not telling Urza the real reason he was outside the academy grounds. Beren was also present, and he let Karn and Jorah into the room. When Jorah went to confess that she was the reason that Teferi was outside the academy grounds, Teferi interrupted her to tell everyone that he was outside that night before because Jorah had dared him to do it, just to see if he could bypass the academy guards.
So he's still trying to make it seem like he wasn't following. Like, he doesn't want to tell.
No, because he likes her.
Aww.
Yeah.
Is he the mystery man? Maybe.
There's no mystery to Teferi. He's all surface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's just a pain in the ass.
Well, maybe he's her soulmate.
He might be. Because a man of mystery or a woman of mystery or a whatever
or an
mystery.
international man of mystery.
Well, that's
yeah,
an exception. That's an exception.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see how many Austin Powers references I can get into this episode.
Otherwise, it's a red flag. But anyways, I guess somebody is going to have to be nicer to Teferi from now on because he just threw himself under the bus for you, Jorah. Anyways, Urza and Beren didn't believe the young man, even if they told the two students and Karn that they did. The three of them left while Urza and Beren discussed what really might be happening outside the academy grounds. Urza told Beren that he thought there was a Phyrexian somewhere in the academy. He claimed he could smell it. Glistening oil, anyone? So,
probably.
Yeah,
it's got to be Carrick.
Yeah, well, you guys, yeah.
It's that beautiful boy.
Well, it's his blonde locks. Yeah. And on Karn's next trip through time, he discovered who the Phyrexian was. On this trip, Karn was sent back 46 hours, so just shy of 2 days. And that was the furthest he'd been sent back yet. Now is a good time to explain Karn's perspective of the time jump. So during the time jump process, while Karn was still under the time machine and at the 22-hour backward mark, so Karn gets under the time machine and it starts working and it's like whoa whoa whoa.
He's
whoa,
like,
whoa,
it's
whoa,
working.
Whoa, whoa. It's just like Jake Lloyd from episode 1, exactly. And so things start to go in reverse. So Urza and Beren are working the controls of the machine, and as the machine starts working, they start working the controls backward, and then they eventually walk backward out of the room. So Karn can stand there and see everything happening in reverse. So he's not just like instantly transported.
Cool.
Yeah.
During this trip, at the 22-hour backward mark, he saw someone enter Urza's lab and search it. And at that point in time, it was dark, and Karn was unable to see who the person was. But it was clear that whatever was going on, it was nefarious. At least it's clear to us.
Well, yeah, if someone's lurking around in the dark.
If you're lurking, it's nefarious.
If Teferi was ever to become like a hip hop star, he should be Teferious.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, that might be the next secret layer. We get like a Post Malone secret layer.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, anything goes now. You know it, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a perfect representation of how the Magic community feels right now.
Oh, that's funny.
There you go.
Just collectively gripping their forehead. Yeah.
So, Now Karn, 46 hours in the past, by that time, whoever had broken into the lab that the night before had returned and at least was beginning to open the door to enter. Karn hadn't been sent anywhere geographically on this trip, so when he arrived in the past, he was still in Urza's lab, ready to find out who the person was. Whoever was opening the door to the lab must have heard Karn inside, because when Karn moved toward the door, it closed quickly, but gently. So Karn gave chase. Stopping at the door, he opened it slightly to look down the hall and saw Carrick disappear around the corner. You guys were right. He's bad.
Look at that.
Joyra
It's not
had
like
told...
you built that up or anything.
It's not even a good fake name. Go with like Phil or something. It's way too close to Crick. Joyra had told Carrick how she got in and out of the academy on a daily basis, and that's how he was able to infiltrate the school. Anyway, Karn kept right on after Carrick because he really didn't trust this guy, and why would anybody? Karn didn't trust him from the get-go, everybody. I mean, he's shooting arrows at him. You're not going to trust that guy.
No.
It must be really hard for Karn to like catch somebody in a way, because it's like you kind of always know where he is. He's a big metal golem. He's got to walk or run pretty loud.
Yeah, and multiple times throughout this novel and the next novel, Karn will say, people will be like, Karn, come on, go faster. And he's like, hey, guy, I wasn't built for speed, all right?
Yeah.
He's like, Karn's sad.
I'm a big hulking golem.
I'm huge. Yes. Give me a break.
Like what?
So Karn's pursuit led him outside the academy walls and into the woods. When he finally caught up to Carrick, Karn saw that he was talking to two strangers. Karn remained hidden and heard Carrick say,
"The passage is here. Bring the full company of negators. I will be sure the way is open. I will be sure the guards on the wall are dead."
So in case you hadn't figured it out, everybody, Carrick's a bad guy.
What?
And the passage she's referring to is the one that Joyra showed him, the one that she used to get in and out of the school undetected. Of course, she didn't know he was a bad guy while she was snuggling with him.
But the bad ones are fun to snuggle with.
Well, he's a man of mystery. Yeah, it's a red flag.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was all Karn was able to see, because at that moment he was pulled back to the present by Urza and Baron, whom he told about what he had just seen. Karn didn't feel good about betraying Joyra's confidence, but an invasion of the academy was far more important. And remember, that was 2 days ago, so we're about to see some action.
Yeah.
And that is where we're going to pick back up for part 2 of this series.
Fun.
Yes. So, everyone, hopefully you enjoyed the first part of our Time Streams Explained series. This might be... I don't know how many episodes this is going to be. This might take us right into Commander Legends, but we'll just have to see.
It's going to be a mystery.
Unless they read the book. But they're...
I mean, you can, but like, why?
Yeah, why? We're just going to do it for you.
Yeah.
You can, of course, find us on all the podcast platforms, including YouTube, where you might be watching this right now, probably listening to it. And you can find me on Instagram at Command Beacon. Honey, where can people find you?
People can find me on the Instagram at Ainsley Amethyst, all one word. And of course, you can find Turn One Soul Ring, the podcast, on Instagram as well.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week with part 2 of our Time Streams Explained series. Also, check out the links in the description below if you like deck techs or deck lists, because you can find Eric, Riley, and mine's links to our Deckstats decks, including the ones we've done for the show, as well as just our personal decks.
Personal fun stuff.
That's right. All right, everybody. Well, we will talk to you soon, and have a nice time until then.
Yeah, baby.
Crick.
Oh, God. It's going to be hard not to do the creak every time we talk about him, because it's just going to be that becomes his name. Spoiler alert.
That's
Outstanding.
All right, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Turn one soul ring.